Thank you, Deputy Speaker. News outlets are presently reporting power outages impacting thousands of residents in Wagga Wagga. And it's not just that large inland city in southern New South Wales, it's also Henty, it's Holbrook, Rand, Culcairn, south of the largest inland city in the state. Thousands of houses in Wagga Wagga are without power as the oppressive heatwave continues to grip parts of New South Wales. That's what the media reports are suggesting. Reports of a blackout were first recorded at about 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday, today, affecting more than 6,000 customers. They are essential energy customers. The fact is, at the moment in Wagga Wagga, it's 21 degrees Celsius. The fact is, there hasn't been a heatwave as suggested by the media outlets. The fact is, it is the second power outage that the city has experienced just in recent weeks. We had a storm go through there several days ago and knock the power out for many of the homes and many of the businesses. Not anywhere near half of the homes or the businesses, I might add, but many thousands of people were affected. And this is the thin edge of the wedge, because if you can have a storm, and not a huge storm, but if you can also have hotter weather and not a heat wave affecting power such as this, then what is going to happen when we have a real storm, or indeed the weather reaches temperatures, as it normally does in Wagga Wagga, of the old 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the old century mark, 38 degrees Celsius. And that will come. That will come in summer, December, January, through February. That's how hot it gets in Wagga Wagga. And I remember some years ago suggesting that nobody will really worry too much about blackouts. We'd had some dreadful blackouts in Adelaide. Thousands upon thousands of South Australians affected. And I said, well, people won't really get all that worried until one of the day-nighters at one of the major cricket grounds is cast into pitch blackness. And I was mocked. I was derided by the media. And you know what? It was only a week or so later, and that's exactly what happened. And heaven help us if we do have to power shed this summer, as we will, and Tomago, our largest electricity user, is forced to shut down, forcing people off duty. It is a real worry. And if you can't have reasonable, cost-effective power, how on earth are you going to have a future made in Australia manufacturing-wise? And I'm all for making things in Australia. I'm all for ensuring that we have manufacturing jobs, factories producing things made in Australia. But there is so much folly about this bill. The purpose of this package of 3 bills is to initiate a guarantee of origin scheme to track and verify emissions connected with products made in Australia. Further, it provides a mechanism for renewable electricity certification. Now, that should send a shiver down many people's spines. The Guarantee of Origin Scheme framework aims to transparently, note how I said that word, rather facetiously perhaps, determine where a product has come from, how it was made, and its total emissions. It will initially cover hydrogen and renewable electricity, but expand over time to cover other products. The bills will also establish the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin certification mechanism to acknowledge renewable energy content of electricity used in a production process. Now, I don't know about others, but I think we're treading into very dangerous territory, and I'll tell you why. These bills fail to be technology agnostic. And everything that we've said and done as a coalition has always had that word balance incorporated in it when it comes to energy. We've always said that we need to have a correct and proper balance. And renewables are fine, but this rush to renewables by this Labor government puts at risk jobs, puts at risk costs, puts at risk, indeed, our ability to produce things, our ability to make things in Australia. It puts at risk our farmers. It puts at risk our ability to grow food and fibre. Now, their bills also show bias against hydro in favour of wind and solar. Now, the Snowy hydroelectricity scheme, which is in the Snowy Valleys, soon to be incorporated again in the Riverina electorate, was built not as a hydroelectricity scheme to begin with, but built as an irrigation scheme for the Murrumbidgee irrigation area. And later on, Colliambly irrigation area also utilised that life-giving product that called water that Samuel McCaughey pioneered for that particular region in the late 19th century. And when John Oxley, the explorer, went through the area now known as the Murrumbidgee irrigation area, that Garden of Eden, he described it as land that no one would ever want to inhabit. It was a veritable desert, and he described it thus. And yet, what those irrigation pioneers did, the likes of Sir Samuel, the likes of those World War I veterans who were sent there and given a small plot, what they did was they turned that desert into food-producing areas. And now we have a government that not only wants to bring in bills such as this, but also wants to buy all the productive water out of the system such that our farmers, some of them debt-stressed, have a distorted water market, and once the water goes out of a valley, it very rarely comes back, because what it does, at the behest of the Greens and holding Labor by the nose and pulling them along, what it does, it sends all that productive water out of the mouth of the Murray and out to sea, and then it can't be used for water. And if you're going to have a future made in Australia, well, the first thing we should be growing is food, and not just for our people, but indeed for many other nations besides, because our food is the best. Our food is the cleanest. Our food is the greenest. And I could have said farmers and replaced the word food in every one of those sentences, because our farmers are the best stewards of the environment in the world, and they do grow the best and the freshest and the cleanest and the greenest food. And whether that's at Shepparton, whether that's in the fine state of Tasmania, whether that's in Queensland, certainly New South Wales, right across this nation, our farmers are champions. And these bills don't align with the efforts that they go to produce that food, a future made in Australia. Speaking of alignment, these bills also do not align with overseas schemes. Whilst alignment with international geo schemes has been a recognised priority of industry, apparently, the preclusion of technologies such as blue hydrogen using gas with carbon capture and storage puts Australia's scheme at odds with similar schemes being established in the European Union and the United Kingdom. But do you think Labor cares? Do you think Labor worries about those concerns that I and others have with these bills? Now, it's also a great risk for Australia putting a Trojan horse for a broader economy-wide carbon price. Now, we all remember what happened when, in late 2010, the then Prime Minister said that there will be. Well, she actually wasn't Prime Minister at the time. She was the opposition. She was the. No, she was the. Sorry, she was the Prime Minister. She said that there will be no carbon tax under a government I lead, and that was perhaps right then. But then, of course, we had Bob Brown. We had as the Greens leader. And at least I will say one thing about Bob Brown. He was an environmentalist, first and foremost, and probably only. These days, the member for Melbourne and member for Griffith and all the other Greens cabal from that Greens political party, well, they are not environmentalists. They want to just change society for the worse. They want to tear down traditions. They want to strip away all the things that have made this country great. But I digress. But then Prime Minister Gillard then did a press conference in that unholy Greens-Labor alliance and placed a price on carbon, and we know what happened after that. That said, what we see here is the scheme intended to initially cover hydrogen. The government's plan will expand it over time, and that's the devil in the detail. That's what you have to worry about, because it's not what necessarily is in the bill per se as it stands now. It's what a future Labor, Greens, Teals, crossbench, who knows what parties they'll gather together if need be. That's what they'll do in the future. It bears little resemblance to the policy of the former coalition government. The coalition's approach was technology agnostic. The coalition's approach was balance. The coalition's approach was practical, sensible. It understood, taking on board what stakeholders said and suggested that should happen. Now, we do need a future made in Australia, and I'm not so blind as to say that we shouldn't take on board green energy suggestions. I met with Helen Philippidis, who's the Manager of Corporate Affairs at the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group, just on Monday. This group is one of the largest infrastructure businesses in Australia, with assets valued at more than $9.5 billion, and they're suggesting a considerable project in the industrial hub at Wagga Wagga. And by the looks of it, this project will provide a 10 megawatts electrolyser, blends up to 10% renewable hydrogen into the local network. And we have to look at these things seriously, and we have to take them on board for the effort and the investment that are being put in. I know that the project also intends to work in conjunction with an anaerobic digester to be built. I know what they're doing just outside Parkes with converting waste into energy. These are good and sensible ideas. These are projects. The one at Parkes taking on board what they're doing at Kwinana as well, over in the west. These are good and sensible projects, and people are happy to back them. But this particular bill and this package of bills are not good. And what also worries me is that so many of the energy projects in and around my area, these huge solar farms taking up valuable prime agricultural land, and you've only got a certain amount of farmland, and once taken, it's decades before you actually potentially get it back, and then who knows what leaching will be in the soil anyway. But what happens is they're considered state-significant, state-priority projects, and then the New South Wales government comes in and just rides roughshod over local people, local residents, local ratepayers, local councils, be they shire or city councils, but people elected by locals to do the job for them, and they don't get a say. They don't get a say because the state government says, oh no, this is a state-significant project, and some of them are as small as $5 million. And yet, because they're considered state-significant, the Macquarie Street just rides roughshod over the local council, over local people, and it's just not right. It's just undemocratic. And we live in Australia in 2024. We should be far better than that. Yes, we do need a future made in Australia. We do need the factories of the farms to be operating as efficiently and as smooth as possible. We don't need them to have to continue to pay huge power bills, and the like of what is happening at Wagga Wagga and southern New South Wales today as far as the tripping, the outages, the power blackouts. is just, as I said, the thin edge of the wedge. I hate to think what's going to happen the rest of the summer if a small electrical storm or a little bit of hot weather can knock out the power like that.